What is up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Welcome to Taurus Trading. My name is Rodney. I am not a financial advisor. Nothing I say in this video is financial advice. It is just research that I have done and information that I have gathered that is available to anyone that wants to find it. I'm really excited to talk about today a company that was one of the very first companies that I invested in when I first started investing last year. I think this is a great company. I think they're doing great things, and not very many people know about them. They're in the right in the middle of everything that's going on with this COVID pandemic, and nobody, I don't want to say nobody, but hardly anybody even knows about them. So I'm excited to talk about it. Like I said, this is one of my very first investments, so I've got that relationship with RVP. We've been through ups and downs, and it's one of the stocks that I will never stop paying attention to. So that being said, let's get into it. So what's the company that we're going to be talking about today? It's called Retractable Technologies. Retractable Technologies, ticker symbol RVP. Founder and CEO Thomas Shaw. RVP was founded by Thomas Shaw in 1995. It received a $650,000 in grants from the NIH, the National Institute of Health, to encourage U.S. production of medical supplies. And the town of Little Elm, Texas, kicked in $350,000 based on the promise of 600 jobs coming to the area. So how did it all begin? What gave him the idea to start this company? In 1989, Retractable's founder, Thomas J. Shaw, saw a television news segment about a doctor who had contracted HIV from an accidental needle stick injury. The doctor complained that the design engineers were insensitive and unresponsive to the dangers faced daily by frontline healthcare workers. I think that's a very important thing that not enough people really talk about. I mean, it's now with COVID going on, people are very aware of a lot of the dangers that the frontline workers face. But so I think this is very important. We'll get into it a little more as we get into it a little more. Shaw, a mechanical and structural engineer, was struck by the doctor's criticism and felt compelled to act. After spending a year developing preliminary design concepts, Shaw was awarded a grant by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, a subsidiary of the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, to further develop his design concepts. Later, he was awarded an additional grant to commercialize the production of one of his retractable syringe designs and to produce products for clinical trials. So what is it they do exactly? Retractable Technologies is focused on reducing healthcare-related exposure to bloodborne pathogens. Our solutions are based on engineering controls, devices that effectively reduce the risk of exposure associated with needle stick injury and device reuse. Unfortunately, healthcare worker access to innovative products is often limited by contracts and entrenched market interests. RTI has battled and continues to battle to provide safe, innovative products to healthcare workers. So, again, with this COVID thing going on, this is something that has been brought to the front and center of the attention of everyone, is the safety of healthcare workers. What are some of the safety problems? And some of these things blew my mind. Like, I had no idea it was, I had no idea. You'll see what I'm saying here in a second. So unsafe safety products, safe in name only, they actually increase the number of needle stick injuries. Similar to how more people cut themselves with a dull knife than they do with a sharp knife, I imagine, because they're being more careful with the sharp knife. They know there's a risk. If you think that you're using a safety device, you're not necessarily being as careful. So you assume you're going to be fine, and you aren't. And so it actually increases the number of needle stick injuries. Some clinicians, fearful of getting stuck, often intentionally don't activate the safety feature. So I guess there's also some design flaws, and they're not actually as safe as they claim to be. Another problem we've got here, catheter-related bloodstream infections, needleless connectors associated with rising rates of CRBSI, catheter-related bloodstream infections. Lower tip of a standard syringe is exposed to the risk of contact and contamination. Since the lower tip directly interfaces with the access port, contamination of the lower tip has the potential for contaminating the access port, which increases the risk of infection. Another problem we've got, needle stick injuries. Huge problem, needle stick injuries. Worldwide needle stick injuries cause millions of exposures annually to HIV/AIDS, hepatitis B virus, HBV, hepatitis C virus, HCV, and many other bloodborne diseases. It's estimated that 320,000 needle stick injuries occur every year in the United States alone. That is a lot of injuries from needle sticks. There are more than 20 bloodborne pathogens that can be transmitted by these injuries. So that's serious stuff. 320,000 situations where there could be any of 20 bloodborne pathogens transmitted. Syringe reuse. This is the one I was really talking about that just blows my mind. Syringe reuse is a worldwide problem, and it can result in the spread of bloodborne pathogens. The World Health Organization, the WHO, estimates that 40% of the 16 billion injections administered worldwide annually involve reused, unsterilized syringes and needles, unsafe injections climbing to 70% in some countries. 40% of the 16 billion injections administered worldwide annually involve reused, unsterilized syringes and needles. That's incredible to me. The reuse of injection equipment is responsible worldwide for 32% of new HBV infections, 40% of new HCV infections, and 5% of all new HIV infections. That's insane. 32% and 40% of hepatitis viruses, all new infections worldwide, come from syringe reuse. Incredible. So what are some of the issues that Retractable Technologies is trying to address with their products? What RTI is doing is extremely important. RVP, ticker symbol RVP. That's what you're going to want to remember. So they are trying to prevent needle stick injuries during disposal, prevent contamination when using needles and syringes on the patient, prevent the spread of disease caused by needle stick injuries and needle reuse, such as hepatitis B and C, HIV, etc. Reducing the space, and this is something I haven't talked about yet, but we will, reducing the space required for disposal of the devices. Reduce and eliminate wasted doses, aka dead space. And we will get more into that, the dead space thing here in a minute. Here's what they've got going on as far as some of their products. Uniquely designed injection devices, patient-safe LureGuard devices, VanishPoint collection devices, and VanishPoint infusion devices. We will get into each one of these things individually in more detail. As far as the injection devices go, they have the VanishPoint syringes. Now, these are the big ones. These are the ones that everybody's talking about, that everybody's using for these vaccines, the VanishPoint syringes. Patient-safe syringes, EasyPoint needles. Those are all for injections. Blood collection devices, and they also have the VanishPoint IV catheters. So let's talk about them. The first one we're going to talk about is VanishPoint syringes. Again, this is the big one. This is the one that I think really got them going this year for sure. VanishPoint syringes, the gold standard for retractable needle syringes. The needle is automatically retracted from the patient when the plunger handle is fully depressed. So as soon as they give that shot and press that plunger all the way in there, that needle retracts into the syringe. The pre-removal automated retraction virtually eliminates exposure to the contaminated needle, reducing the risks of needle stick injuries. Virtually eliminates the exposure. And you'll see how in a minute here. They're easy to use. They're single-handed activation. They require less disposal space, and that's a big deal. I mean, you can think about how much space this stuff requires to throw out. You got the needle sticking way out. You've got to cover that needle, and you've got to dispose of it. If that needle's not sticking out, then that does away with like half of that space required almost. And prevent the disposal-related needle stick injuries by eliminating that needle stick possibility. Here's how it works here. We've got the needle as you can see, is in the patient's arm, I assume that is. And then once it gets fully depressed, you see that needle is no longer there. It has popped into the syringe, completely encased in the syringe, cannot be touched, cannot be gotten to, cannot poke anybody. So I think that is a fantastic thing. Fully depress the plunger with your thumb to give the full dose and activate the retraction mechanism while the needle is still in the patient. So you never even have to pull it out. It's just, there's never a risk of it. The next product that we're going to talk about is the patient-safe syringes. The patient-safe syringes are uniquely designed to reduce the risk of bloodstream infections from catheter hub contamination. They protect both the patient and the clinician. The design promotes safe handling of the syringes and the medication by reducing the risk of contact contamination. So here's pictures of the standard syringe and what that tip looks like. As you can see, it's just out there, it's just out there for you to touch and do whatever. So this is their patient-safe syringe. It's got this butterfly guard, as they call it, that protects it. You got to remember how small these syringes are, maybe the size of your pinky finger. So, you might be able to get your pinky finger on there to, so that's a huge protection for the lower hub there. And it also aids with the alignment as you're screwing it together to ensure that it gets a snug fit. There's no leaks, there's no air coming through there, no possibility of contamination that way. The third injection device is the VanishPoint retractable needles. The VanishPoint needles are they have added versatility from other needles of this variety. They can be used with lure lock and lure slip syringes, including pre-filled syringes. So you can just put the syringe directly on there and use it like that. When the needle color code activation tab is pressed, the needle automatically retracts into the safety chamber, remains enclosed through disposal, reducing the risk of exposure to medication or blood and bodily fluids. VanishPoint needles can be used for both injection and aspiration. Aspiration is basically the opposite of injection. Needle aspiration definition, to draw breath or air from a needle. So when you're withdrawing something out instead of putting it in. For example, a fine needle aspiration procedure used to obtain a sample of cells from a breast lump. So again, something very commonly used for many different purposes, and it just eliminates the risk of needle stick injuries again. Now the blood collection devices. First blood collection device, again, reducing the risk of needle stick injuries, reducing the exposure to the blood. It has a design where the finger grips allow for easy handling. It's clear, which is a unique feature to allow you to see everything going on, and the trigger reduces the risk of inadvertent activation. So these are for if you need like an IV in your hand to withdraw, to get blood out of your hand if you're in the hospital, that, and they tape it onto your hand. That's what this is. And the blood comes through the tubes here. Like blood transfusion and stuff like that, whatever, all kinds of stuff. And here's the tubes that everybody's seen. If they've ever had blood taken, these tubes, the ones that they pull a tube out, they put a tube in, it scares the crap out of you. You think you're going to lose, they're going to shove the needle halfway in your arm. At least that's what I used to think when that would happen when I was a kid. So this needle is automatically retracted from the patient when the end cap is closed. So the end cap, after the last tube has been removed, when you're done swapping tubes, you close this end cap and the needle pops out. Virtually eliminates the exposure to both ends of the needle, both the end in your arm and this end inside the tube, reducing the risk of needle stick injury. VanishPoint blood collection tube holders are single use. You cannot reuse them once this has been activated. Another good thing. And infusion devices, they also have these Catheter Iv Catheters. Easy to use, allows for one-handed use, automatically retracts the inducer needle, which remains safely retracted inside the housing until disposal when you activate it. It reduces the risk of a needle stick injury. It's just, I think it's a great thing. I think it's a fantastic thing that they've got going on here. They're taking care of this, preventing the needle stick injuries, right? They've done that. Prevent contamination. They've done that. Preventing the spread of diseases. That will help greatly based off the numbers that we've seen, right? Reducing the space required for disposal. We went over that briefly. And reducing / eliminating wasted doses, aka the dead space, right? So what is the dead space? Low dead space syringe is a type of syringe that's designed to limit the amount of dead space that exists between the syringe hub and the needle. That is this point right here. Syringe dead space is the volume of residual fluid that remains within the syringe after the plunger is fully depressed during medication injection. So a lot of times this doesn't make it all the way to the end. There's some dose left up in here in the needle, right? Here, maybe here. I'm no doctor, but in here somewhere, right? There's some dose left. I believe it's up towards the needle side. And you can't get that dose out. Wasted, yeah? So that helps with that as well. So we've gone over what they do. We've gone over their products. Let's go over a little bit about their financial situation. I'm no genius when it comes to this sort of thing, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out whether this is a profitable company in this day and age or not, right? So they have had contract after contract over this past year. 4/19/2021, at least so they got this notice. This is a notice that they have of intent that they got for a previous contract that they signed in February 2021, $54.2 million for providing needles during this pandemic. That contract came with an option for 7 additional months. This letter of intent is to exercise at least the first 2 months of that contract, extending the date from July 14th to September 14th, the expiration of that contract. It includes this contract alone, that extra 2 months, includes approximately $23.5 million, and that includes the freight costs. So they don't have to pay out of pocket for the freight costs that's being paid for by this contract, right? So that's the letter of intent they received April 19th. May 25th, this article talks about that $27.3 million for syringes. Oh, no, okay, so this is something, no, I apologize. This contract that they're speaking of is a grant that they won, is a multi-million-dollar grant. This grant will enable the company to install 2 additional automated low dead space safety syringe assembly lines at its Texas plant. The 2 additional assembly lines will enable a 75% increase in U.S. production capacity of the syringes. 75% is a giant increase. So this contract is paying for, this $27.3 million contract is paying for them to upgrade their facilities, upgrade the production by 75%. The company has already landed an $83.8 million contract with the HHS in February of 2020. And again, this letter of intent that we just looked at, there was a contract in February 2021 as well for the additional $23.5 million. So the low dead space syringes maximize dose efficiency and allow for 20% more COVID-19 vaccines. These syringes that Retractable Technologies makes, these VanishPoint syringes, allow for 20% more vaccine use per vial, because it allows all the vaccine to be used that most syringes cannot get. And there's also, from what I understand, vaccine in the vial that they cannot get out of the vial into the syringe, period. And this syringe does a better job with that, as well as reducing the dead space in the syringe, period. They announced that they want to exercise all 7 of those 1-month option periods, not just the 2 that they initially announced they wanted to exercise. Then only took them a couple weeks to decide that they wanted to go ahead with the whole thing, right? So the February 14th, 2022 is now the expiration date of that contract. This extra 7, all 7 of them, of these months, increase the contract value by $92 million, almost $93 million, including the price of the products and the freight reimbursement. So again, they're not having to pay for any of the moving and the shipping and anything. The freight reimbursement is included in this contract. So they're just raking in money over this past year for the products that are in such high demand right now. And to be completely honest, these are the leader in syringes. The way the world is now, everything is going towards safety, right? Safety this, safety that. Why would this not eventually just become a law that these syringes are just the only ones that you can use? If that were to ever happen one day, they've got the market cornered, 100% cornered on all this stuff. It's they're in great position right now. All this attention they've gotten as well from this pandemic is just setting them up. The government would not give them $30 million to add production to their plants if they did not intend on continuously using them in the future. Not just for this next year until everybody's vaccinated, but they want these syringes out. They want them everywhere. So their earnings for quarter one reported a profit of $18 million in Q1 of 2020. 52 cents a share, revenue of $50 million. And if you look here, their net income year over year over this, I mean, it's just insane. 5,500% over this time last year. It's how can you argue with that? How can you argue with that? I think this company has a very bright future ahead of them, no matter what happens with COVID. You know, these things are just great. I mean, who wants, what did we say earlier? 70% of infections in some countries because of needle reuse. That's astronomically high. So now that we've talked about what they do, now that we've talked about whether they're making money or not, whether they have a future ahead of them looking bright, and I believe they most certainly do. So this is a relatively low volume stock, the majority of the time, right now, anyhow. Little choppy. As you can see, according to Webull, they only have 34 million shares outstanding with a free float of 14.5 million shares. So it's not that big of a float, right? Zoom out to the daily. It wasn't an eternity ago that we were trading up in the $20 area, you know, 15 to 20 bucks, bouncing around 15 to 20 bucks here for a while. There was a lot of attention on this a few months ago, and then the market, you know, took a dump. So I think it's going to recover along with everything else. Maybe not quite as soon, if you will, because it's not one of the hot stocks. You know what I mean? It's not, everybody's not looking at it. You know, and not everybody's wondering what RVP is up to. But in my opinion, I think that this is a fantastic time to buy this stock if you're looking to get in. I don't think it's going to make you 50% gains in a day, but as you see, it has its volatile days. I mean, here's your bottom at 880, right? And here's your top channel. So it bounced between $8.80 and $10, you know, regularly for a couple weeks. And we had a couple, let's go to the hours so you see the after hours. We had a couple breaks over top of it, right? This is when that news hit, June 1st. Had a couple breaks over top of it, but it just gets pushed right back down because there's not enough attention. Nobody knows what the heck, you know, nobody knows what RVP is. That's why I'm doing this. It's part of why I'm doing this. People need to know this is a great company, and I think it's a great stock. So we have had 1, 2, 3, basically 4, 5, 6, you know, we have a solid bottom here around $8.89, right? And a solid top. I think we are starting to see the beginning of a push out of this downward channel that we've been in and this consolidation period that we've been in for a while. We are getting above this 200 EMA. The 15 MA for the first time in a long time, is above the 200 EMA. First time in a long time. I think that's great. That's gonna, it wants to go. You can see it wants to go. It's testing these highs. It's testing them, right? It really wants it, and it's in this upward channel. So I think I really don't know if you should if you're going to get much better deal than this, you might see another drop back down to the upper 9s somewhere. But I don't think you're going to get much better deal than that. And to be completely honest, today is Friday, June 4th. It's looking to me like you're not going to have this deal available for you for much longer either. So that's my 2 cents on it. I think if you want to take a shot at getting into this stock, there's no better chance than right now to get in. Because when this does move, it moves. Relatively low float stock, low volume normally. When the volume picks up, when this thing gets attention, it starts moving. You know, I think when the news comes out, I think you get some shorts covering. They realize, you know, it's people buying, but I think because it's very heavily shorted as well. It's very heavily shorted stock. Not anything insane, but it is. And I think every time you see one of these little pops, because it doesn't have the volume to follow through, they can just short it back down. And it's getting these pushes. It's getting more and more of these pops. Pop, 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 pop. So it's getting ready to go, I believe, in my opinion. So if you want to take a shot on it, there you go. I believe now is just as good a time as any to buy this $10 support level. This $10 level has been a crazy good support for us back here. It was resistance back here, and it held up for support for a long time, back at the end of last year. So that about wraps it up. That covers pretty much everything I've got to say on RVP today. If you liked the video, please leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. We'll be doing more videos on more stocks. If there's any stocks you would like me to cover, go ahead and ask me in the comments. If there's any questions you want to ask, go ahead and ask me in the comments. Anything you got to say it in the comments. I have like 3 subscribers right now. I will see your comments. I will read your comments, and I will reply to your comments. So I will leave the link to Retractable Technologies website in the description. If there's anything you want to go and check out on your own, you can go do that. And I appreciate you watching my video. I will catch you guys next time.